Hello, today we're going to talk about decimals to the hundredths place. This is an introduction. So if I put any, let's review, we have the ones place, the tens place, the hundreds place, the thousands place to the left of the decimal point. Here is our decimal point. It's always right between the ones and the tenths, sorry. And then to the right we have the tenths, and then we have the hundredths place. Okay, so if I put a digit in the hundredths place, what I'm really doing, to review, if I put a, let's say if I put a one in the ones place, if I moved that one, if I moved that one and then wrote it as into the tenths place, I would write 0 ones and 1/10. So that's, or you could just write 0.1, 1/10. We are taking that one, we're taking this one, and we're dividing it by 10. So 1/10 is the same as 1 divided by 10. 1/10 is the same as 1 divided by 10. Let's say we then move it again. So we're going to move that tenths over to the hundredths place. So then it would be here. And so we would put 0 in the tenths place. We would put a decimal point. There we go. Let's see. It's not showing up very well, but that should be just a dot. And so we have 0 and 1/100th. 0 and 1/100th. If I were to give a visual model of this, I would be taking the 1 from up here, the 1, and I divided it by 10, and then the 1, I divided it by 10, and then I divided it by 10 again. Or you could say that's equal to 1 divided by 100. And here I have a picture of one whole thing divided into 100 pieces. And if I have just one of those 100 pieces, then I have just one of those pieces filled in. That's what that would look like. That's 1/100th. That's what 1/100th looks like as a visual model. And you can actually write this also as a fraction. That's 1 divided by 100, or 1/100th as a fraction. So 1/100th as a fraction is the same as 0 and 1/100th as a decimal. Make sure that right in between the 0, the ones in the tenths place is a decimal, and I just think my decimal's not doing a good job showing up. There we go. Something like that. So it's 0.01 is read as 1/100th. If I were to do 200ths, I would write it, I can write it as a, I'll leave that there. I can write it as a, fraction. 200ths. Let me actually go ahead and fill that in so you see they're both blue. 200ths is equivalent to, 200ths is equal to as a fraction and 200ths as a decimal. You can continue this way, so let's do 3 of them. So that would be 3/100ths. So that would be 3/100ths as a fraction, which is equivalent to 3/100ths as a decimal. Now that you know this, you see it as a visual model, it's a fraction, it's a decimal. Let's do a few different problems. So sometimes you might be asked to write a word problem as a decimal. So you might be asked to write 3/100ths as a decimal, and to write that you would just put this 3/100ths as a decimal. Maybe you would be asked to write 27/100ths as a fraction. 27/100ths would be equal to 0 and 27/100ths. Now, if you were to write that out in expanded form, that's actually 2/10 plus 7/100ths, or some people preferred it as a fraction in expanded form, 2/10 plus 7/100ths. Okay, and that's the same as 27/100ths, because 20/100ths is the same as 2/10, so 20/100ths plus 7/100ths equals 27/100ths. Okay. Sometimes you might be asked to convert fractions into decimals. So you might be asked to convert fractions into decimals. So you might be given a problem like 33/100ths as a fraction, and they might ask you to please write this as a decimal, and that is written as 0 and 33/100ths. If they ask you to write something like 9/100ths as a fraction, it would be 0 and 0/10, 9 in the hundredths place. Finally, you might ask to write money as a decimal. So perhaps you're asked to take an amount of money, perhaps 6 times, and write that as a fraction. So if you were asked to write, or not a fraction, I'm sorry, if you're asked to write 6 times as a decimal, you could write 6 times is 60 cents, so we would write it like that. You could be also asked to write 3/4. 3/4, each quarter, 1/4 we know is 25 cents. So if we're asked to do 3/4, that would be 75 cents, or 75 out of $1. 75 cents out of $1. 6 pennies. 6 pennies would be 0.06. And I just want to bring back this while I'm talking about dimes and pennies. I want to really reiterate some things with this, and I want to talk about the difference between tenths and hundredths, because that's the next step would be converting tenths into hundreds. So first I'll show six hundredths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that would be the 6 pennies. They call that 6 hundredths. You can write that also as a fraction, 6 hundredths. And this is what it looks like as a visual model. One of the other issues I'm going to pull up now is sometimes you'll be asked to convert tenths into hundredths. So I want to start with the visual fraction model for that. If we're doing tenths, we have 10 columns here in here. So let me just color in one column. So one column, we can call that, well, we know that's 10 out of 100 altogether. We can write that as a decimal. That's 10 hundredths. We can also see that's one column. And if we count just the columns, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 columns. Then we can actually write that as one column out of 10 columns altogether. And so that's 1/10 as a fraction, and we can write that as a decimal, 0 and 1/10. So I'm going to line this one up underneath this one. So 0 and 1/10 is the same as 0 and 10 hundredths. Sometimes people will use this information to convert tenths into hundredths to help them compare fractions and or to add fractions. So let's say we're comparing, let's do some comparisons. Let's say we're comparing 0 and 23 hundredths versus 0 and 3 tenths. Well, some people might think that 23 looks bigger than 3, but don't get tricked by that. Okay, let's look at this in the actual visual model. I'm going to put the 23 hundredths up in here. So I'm going to change this one to 23 hundredths. So I have 10, I have 20, I have 3. Okay, and I'm going to change colors. I'm going to change colors, and I'm going to put 3 tenths. Let's put in another one of these 100 grids to show you this comparison. And so I'll put in 3 tenths I'll put in here. So there's 1 out of 10, 1 column out of 10, 2 columns out of 10, and 3 columns out of 10. So the red is the 2300ths, the green is the 3/10ths. Some people will actually take these numbers and line them up. So I'll do that off to the side. Some people will take these numbers and line them up. I'm going to do that off to this side over here. So I had 0 and 2300ths, and then comparing it to 0 and 3/10ths. And they'll convert the 3/10ths to be 30/100ths. So if you know that 3/10ths is the same as 30/100ths, you can then compare these and say 23/100ths is obviously less than 30/100ths. So 23/100ths is less than 3/10ths. All right, so I'll do another problem, one more problem like this with comparing. So again, I'll put in my 2 grids just to give you a visual of what we're comparing. And say I want to compare 400ths with, I'm going to go with the 3/10ths again. I like that 3/10ths. Well, here again, some people might say, well, 4 looks bigger than 3, but let's look at it in the visual model. So the first thing, I'm going to change some colors on you. So we'll change this to 400ths. And I'll color in 400ths. And this one here is 3. And this one here is 3/10ths. So I'll color in 3/10ths. 3/10ths would be 1 out of 10, 1 column out of 10, 2 columns out of 10, and here's 3 columns out of 10. So all 3 columns out of 10. So that's, the red is 4/10ths, and the red is 400ths, the green is 3/10ths. So you have you can see now that 400ths is, you can see now that 400ths is, you can see now that 400ths is less than 3/10ths. If you didn't want to color this all out, you could also either, you could do one of two things. You could stack them. So we have 400ths. Make sure when you stack decimals, you line up your decimal points. And so we can see that there's 0 in the 1's place, and in the 10ths place there's a 3 here, so this one must be bigger. Another way you can do is you can add zeros until you have the same number of decimal points on both sides. And so if you do that, we can see that 30/100ths is greater than 400ths, or 400ths is less than 30/100ths. 400ths is less than 3/10ths. All right, I hope you enjoy this while learning about fractions. And sorry, I hope you enjoy this while learning about decimals. One more thing I want to add is just if you had a problem where you're adding these instead of comparing them. If you were adding these instead of comparing them, if you were adding 4/100ths and 3/10ths, 4/100ths plus 3/10ths, the best thing to do is actually to stack them. So then you would have 4/100ths, line up your decimal point, 3/10ths, and you could see, oh, I don't have anything here, so I need to put in a 0 because I don't have anything, and you'll end up with 0 and 34/100ths, which is, if you added up all of that, that's how many you would have there, is 30 in the bottom plus 4 on the top, so you have 34/100ths. All right, have a great day. Take care.